NBA awards are given out every single season to the best of the best from each category, to some of the top players of all time, but have you ever stopped to wonder who's at the top and bottom of these categories? Even though all these players did something great in their respective year, overall someone's got to be the worst out of all of them, and sometimes some bad players do sneak in and take these rewards. So let's take a look at who they are. But first I will mention we're only mentioning players from the modern era, so no guys from around the 40s and 50s and so on, and no Wilt Chamberlain or else he would take every single spot for this video. So let's go. The best all-star season ever put together is obviously just whoever had the best season in NBA history, which was Michael Jordan's 95 and 96 year, because he was obviously named to the All-Star team. And in that year, it's nearly impossible to top, because he also won league MVP, led the NBA in scoring, made the all-defensive first team, averaged 30 points a game, won a title, and won the All-Star game and Finals MVP. As for the worst player to ever make the All-Star team, well, we have a few contenders. In 2011, Yao Ming got voted to be an All-Star starter, even though he only played 5 games that year and averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds. But this was back when there was fan voting and his popularity in China landed him that starting spot. And that was why he made the All-Star game in every single year of his career. But in 2011, he never actually played in the game because of his split. The most popular All-Star that did play has to be Kobe Bryant in 2016. And we know he was an All-Star because it was his last season, but he averaged 17 points a game that year on a terrible 35% shooting. And his team had an 11-44 record at the time of the All-Star break. But he still managed to get the most fan votes out of anyone in the league. And it's probably no coincidence that this was the last year fan voting was allowed. But probably the worst overall player to make an all-star team at all was James Donaldson, who was a center that averaged 7 points and 9 rebounds on a pretty good Mavs team. But he wasn't a great defender, and the West All-Stars that year needed another center, so I get it. But Mark Eaton was also available, who led the league in blocks and made the all-defensive second team while having a similar record, so not really too sure on that one. The NBA's all-time worst rookie of the year based on only their rookie season where they won the award would have to go to Malcolm Brogdon for the Bucks back in 2017, and this one was just weird because it made him the first ever second round pick to win the award, and he did so by averaging 10 points and 4 assists a game, mainly off the bench, which also won him the award with the lowest points per game total in NBA history. And if you'll remember, this was Joel Embiid's official rookie season after not playing his first 2 years in the league, and he averaged 27 and 2 but only played in 31 games because of injuries, so he didn't count. As for that year's draft class, it brought us Ben Simmons, Jaylen Brown, Domantas Sabonis, and Pascal Siakam, but Ben didn't play in year 1, and the rest of those guys had really slow starts in their first season. The only other notable player that was in the running was Dario Saric, who averaged slightly better stats, but it doesn't matter because if he won it instead, he still would have ended up in this spot. While the best rookie of the year not named Wilt Chamberlain would have to be Oscar Robertson, who came into the league and made an instant impact, averaging 30, 10, and 9.7 rebounds a game. Of course, his era helped him here, but these are some of the most impressive stats from anybody in their rookie year, and it was a great indicator of what was to come. The worst defensive player of the year ever was probably Marc Gasol in 2013. Listen, Gasol was always a top tier defender, and the Grizzlies had the best defense in the league the year that he won it. He made the all-defensive second team that year too, but should have been on the first team instead of Tyson Chandler. But overall, the league's always done a pretty good job of selecting the right player to win this award, and Mark just so happens to be the least best of all the guys who've won it. No offense to him, but someone's got to be at the bottom. As for the best winner of this award, you would think Bill Russell would take it easily. I mean, he's been known to be a legendary defender, but the Defensive Player of the Year award didn't actually become a thing until after he was retired, so we can't officially include him here. But the best defensive season we've ever seen by a Defensive Player of the Year would have to go to David Robinson's 1992 NBA season, where he averaged 4.5 blocks and 2.3 steals, which would have both led the league in today's game by a big margin, because these are huge numbers in both categories. You always see a guy do either one or the other, but rarely ever both. As for the worst league MVP of all time, we go back to 1973 with Dave Cowens, and this one just doesn't make much sense at all. Dave played for the Boston Celtics, who had the best record in the NBA that year, closely followed by Kareem and the Lakers. Well, Kareem won MVP in 1971, 72, and 74, and in 73 he had much better stats than Cowens, putting up 10 more points a game and the same rebounds, while the Celtics only had 8 more total wins than the Bucks. So it really felt like Jabbar should have won it, but it seemed like people were just tired of voting for him, so it went to Dave Cowens. But then you look at the Celtics' actual roster, where John Havlicek was the star of the team and Dave was the second option, and John and Kareem even made the All-NBA first team that year while Dave made the second team. How do you make the All-NBA second team but win the league MVP? So you could have had Havlicek or Kareem win it that year, but instead they didn't, and it kind of makes you think that this one was a little undeserved. And of course, the best league MVP ever for the best MVP season would have to go to Steph Curry for 2016. Sure, the Warriors didn't win the title that year, but based on this award, we're just looking at their regular season, so it's okay. But if we're looking at postseason, we can look at Finals MVP. And as for the worst one of all time, we can stay right in the same area and probably agree that Andre Iguodala's 2015 Finals MVP was the worst. Sure, he guarded LeBron and was able to slow him down a little bit, but finals MVP are usually only won by legendary Hall of Fame level players. And Iguodala may be the only player to ever win the award and not go into the Hall of Fame. He won it averaging 16, 5, and 4 and beat out Curry for it thanks to a couple of bad games. Even LeBron got 4 out of the 11 votes for the award, but Andre got the rest. Then surprisingly, the spot for best finals MVP ever may be even more controversial. We can put up any of Jordan's 6 for the discussion. We'd have to mention D-Wade's 2006 performance that was legendary, LeBron's 2016 finals and what was one of the best wins in series of all time, but then you go back to the 2000 where Shaq and the Lakers played the Pacers. Listen, Rick Smits had no business guarding Shaq, and his stat line of 38, 16, and 3 was peak Shaq, and dominance like that may never be seen again. The worst player to ever lead the NBA in assists would probably have to be Rajon Rondo back in 2016. A lot of times, great players like CP3, Magic Johnson, and John Stockton lead the league in assists, but this year Rondo found himself off of the playoff Celtics and on this terrible Kings team. He'd often hold the ball for far too long and get stats that didn't really mean much, and it ended up that his 11 points and 11 assists a game didn't really make any difference on the Kings. While the best player to lead the NBA would have to be Magic Johnson, who back in 1987 did that while also winning the MVP award and averaging the most points of his career. The best player to lead the league in steals, of course, was MJ in 93, who also led the NBA in scoring that same season. While the worst is interesting because that belongs to current Hawks head coach Nate McMillan, who was always a role player in his days. But back in 1994, impressively enough, he came off the bench and only averaged 6 points a game, but a monster 3 steals every night in only 25 minutes on average. So while he was the worst player, this is without a doubt one of the most impressive feats when it comes to steals. For scoring, it's hard to judge who was the worst since everyone that led the league is great, so we'll just look at the lowest scoring total. And the lowest amount of points a game to ever lead the league, at least in the modern era, was done by Allen Iverson in 99 with 26.8 points a night. And that's not that much. And again, we have Michael Jordan because he's the best player to win a scoring title, so I would go over to who's averaged the most points per game to try to switch it up, but then that's also Michael Jordan, so he deserves this one. As for rebounding leaders, Dennis Rodman wasn't skilled offensively, he had the defense and legendary rebounding, while DeAndre Jordan back in 2014 was probably just as limited offensively and only played so good that time because of Chris Paul, and that's proven by looking at his career before, during, and after the CP3 era. So he averaged 13.6 rebounds in 2014, but was the worst player to ever lead the league. The best player, on the other hand, is of course Kareem. Sure, his team may have missed the playoffs that year in 1976, but that same season he won league MVP, averaged 16.9 rebounds a night, led the NBA with 4.1 blocks, and averaged 27 points, and no one's been able to put up those type of numbers ever since. Then that same year for him was the all-time best year that anyone's led the league in blocks too. The worst though has got to go to Manute Bol because overall he was never really a great player, especially on offense, which is why as a rookie, when he averaged 5 blocks a game, he only put up 3.7 points and 6 rebounds. Stephon Marbury was probably the worst player to ever make an All-NBA team because in 2000 he made the All-NBA third team with 22 points and 8 assists a game. Not bad stats, but they were pointless because he was on a bad Nets team that only finished the year with a 31-51 record. And it doesn't make sense how he made All-NBA when Ray Allen didn't, who at the time was an All-Star that year and led his team to the playoffs. While again, for the best it would be 95-96 Jordan, no discussion needed. The all-time worst to ever win 6th Man of the Year is probably Jamal Crawford for his 2014 season when he averaged 14, 2, and 1 and was a major liability on defense. The best, however, goes to Kevin McHale in 1984 because in that season he averaged 18 and 7, played great off of Larry Bird when he got in the games, had really good defense, and helped Boston win the title that year. While our last one is the most improved player award. The worst season where a player won the award has to be back in 2005 when Bobby Simmons won it. Oh, who? Who is that? Exactly. And the best ever could go one of two ways. It could go to John Morant, who this year made the huge jump from 19.1 points a game last season to 27.4 this one, which is the most ever points by a most improved player. It brought him to the All-Star game, and seeing what he did this postseason against the Warriors shows that he definitely could deserve to be here. But his competition is Giannis back in 2017, who took that huge step offensively and defensively compared to his previous season, and made the All-NBA second team that same year thanks to his improvements. So I think I might have to leave this one a tie. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.